Howdy, all you delicious people. I'm here today to review The Ones Within. Ultimately, I've tried twice to already record this. Ultimately, I was going to take it easy today, but I'm ending up doing more work instead of doing less, because I was just like, I do not feel like the greatest. So I'm going to take it easy today, and I'm putting in more work than I thought I would. But anyways, it ends up being what it is. So let's talk about The Ones Within. Ultimately, you can watch this show on Hulu. Or you can watch it on Funimation. I'm trying to think of the other variation of this, the name of this anime. I think it's called Nakanohito no Gnomes? I'm not sure. I'll probably have it on the title once I can remember. I know it's like gnome something. Nakanohito Gnomes? I tried to do this so many times and now I'm forgetting the title. You would think I'd have memorized the title by now. How many times I numerous have said it. But anyways, The Ones Within. The Ones Within. So this, in a very cryptic-like sense, and I'll do a double 5-time count and I'll break down this thing in spoiler terms. Reasonably, in a very cryptic-like sense, this show has a very great concept, but it doesn't have much beyond that. It's a very bland show. It doesn't really, because its rating really hurts this show. The rating really makes you realize, okay, this is going to be a severely bland show based on looking at a rating. This show is rated TV-14, so it can barely do anything. It doesn't really have a target audience because it supposedly is trying to appeal to everyone, but it probably appeals to no one. It really is too cute for its own good, and I hate cute animes. I kind of was like, there were some episodes I kind of honestly just wanted to completely skip. Just because once you find out what the challenge is for that episode, you're like, oh, okay, great, I can skip this episode and go on to the next episode and like this episode instead, or vice versa, or this and that. There's a lot of times where you can get little slivers of character development here and there, where you get some backstories on some characters, but to have to suffer through an episode that is too, like, cute, or there are certain characters that are more annoying than others, it's not worth it a lot of those times. This concept of the show is like $1 million idea, but they take this $1 million idea and do bupkis with it. Like, I think that is the most disappointing part of the show, where it's like, if this was set for a mature audience, this thing would be like a juggernaut. It would make like $1 billion, like, this would be the most highly popular anime show of all time if it was rated for mature, if it was rated for an adult audience. Because ultimately, I think there's been other things. There's a movie out there called Funhouse 2018, where ultimately that is set for an adult audience, and it is just like this. This show, but it's done for very much mature audience. You have a mascotting character that ultimately gives you a backstory on all the characters and gives them each one specific trait, and then eventually tells them why they're all there. And a lot of them already kind of know why most of them are already all there. But anyways, so we go into this show and we have a group of people that all have certain kind of video game expertise in a place that doesn't actually design for a video game approach to anything. Really nothing at all. There's nothing that would clickbait anybody to want to watch this show and build up a crazy view following for it, because it's not an overly violent show. It's not you have an entire episode where they have to put a giant puzzle together. How exciting is that? A literal puzzle together where they have to put together pieces to make a puzzle. And I'm like, how is that so exciting for anybody to do in a video game, in a virtual world? I'm confused. There's a lot of times where I was like, this doesn't even feel like a virtual world to me. You can kind of play this off as it just being just a regular world, and here's your challenges, because this does not seem at all like a virtual world to me, because there's nothing video game-esque presented in here. Like, there's an entire episode where I think the best episode is probably the hide-and-seek episode, or there's also a very early episode where you have this, like, plant thing that is supposedly coming for people, but it doesn't really do jack crap nothing. It can't really attack anybody, can't really barely grab anybody, doesn't really do anything, doesn't really eat anybody, because in a virtual world you should be able to eat somebody and it doesn't matter because this person is still alive, but you would think it would have some like horror repercussions of this person, like oh my god, like lives should be on the line, like people should have lives, like in any video game where, hey, if you have to stay to 3 lives or whatever. Nothing is in the balance in this entire show. Nothing is like, nobody's gonna get punished for if they don't make any challenges. Nobody's gonna be like basically like here's the real like pitch of this show. So we have these people that first arrive in these woods, and they are introduced to some alpaca-looking guy who just has his alpaca mask, but the rest of his wardrobe is all just a suit and tie. Justifiably, this character is a person that is kind of letting them know that this is a virtual world. There's also a giant panda that they walk around and they find, and they ultimately just make friends with the giant panda. And now I'm just like, what is the point of this game? What is the point? I don't understand. We have a person that in a virtual world has allergies in virtual world, which doesn't make sense. We have characters that are being punished with having to eat peppers in a virtual world. I'm confused. Your punishment is to eat peppers every day in a virtual world. Wow, that seems challenging. Anyways, so, and we have peppers appear on his plate every single day. Again, in a virtual world, none of this makes sense. But anyways, so they should really justify this like virtual world to have something in the balance on this whole thing, but they don't. So anyways, all these people wake up in these woods like the show, kind of like The Island, but there's never ever like a survival mission out of this whole entire thing. There's never at one time where they have to like craft things together. There's never any kind of zombie or monster much in like through most of this. A lot of the times it's like, hey, here's a dating simulator, or hey, here's this like egg challenge, and hey, here's this stupid thing that you have to take care of these babies, like another challenge that just was like the same thing that they did before. They rehash things in the show. So a lot of this is just like too cute for its own good, and I just don't like it. There's like the character that is beloved by everybody is like the nicest guy, and I'm just like, I hate this guy, because now they're pushing that, oh yeah, he's the crowd favorite, everybody loves him. Here's the thing, there's never a time where people vote on who the favorite character is. There's never a time where they should be protecting somebody from certain challenges because they know that they're the most popular character. There's no money on the line. Nobody's getting money out of all this. It's just like everybody's kidnapped and they have to do this $1 million view thing, and everybody's happy to be there, and it's freaking weird. There's one person that's consistently ticked off because he's ticked off character, and here's the thing, when you have two characters that have to consistently argue with one another all the time, and they're shared by the exact same voice actor, and one of the characters does not have a face that you can see because he has a ninja mask on, like that just covers his mouth, to make certain characters look different. Because a lot of the characters all look the effing same. Like, I wish every single one of the characters could look hugely different from one another. Like, give every certain person character a theme to tie each one of these characters into, instead of making them all just be wearing like a t-shirt and jeans. That is the most miserable thing when going through more of this show. Whenever anybody, like, there's 3 different characters that all look similar to one another, and then there's like 2 characters that quasi look similar to one another, and then there's this girl character that you completely forget about because you would love to forget about her, and then there's these 2 girls that consistently are attached to the hip of one another. One of those girls is a horror person, but horror never really comes up in this entire thing. If it does, it is the kiddie table of horror. And the one girl who has pink hair, there's like 2 characters that I think have pink hair in this show, and she is just kind of just there. There's so many characters that are just kind of just there. And, like, there's nothing different and individual about them. Like, a lot of these characters, there's nothing individual about them. Like, any of their talents that they supposedly have through a video game world doesn't go into this at all. It doesn't add into this at all. But anyways, so we go into this, and people are supposed to be driving views. It's supposed to be like, hey guys, do as much as possible to get views. If we were doing a much more mature version of this, like, we would basically be having women consistently wearing bathing suits every day if it doesn't even make sense. Like, there are at times when the women, like, one of the girls is trying to seduce the other girl because she's kind of bisexual, and she is kind of, like, seducing this other girl and, like, hugging on the girl a lot and just like, yeah, a lot of that. And to the point where then she stops at one point with this girl and she's like, I bet we got a ton of views off of doing that. So, like, this girl is like working the system knowing full well that, hey, let's do this because I know that it'll get views. And we find out that not everybody is what they are. Like, I would assume that there probably would have been somebody to be like the ringer, to be like the producer of this show, to try and otherwise make everybody do all these challenges, like get something to get the ratings up on the show and this and that, because they got to get 100 million views, because evidently the previous team that went into this couldn't get it done and took them forever to do so. Evidently, one of the characters has a reason for him being on the show, and we find out why later on in the show, but it really doesn't go anywhere, because of course nothing really goes anywhere on this show, because it's TV-14, but then on top of that, it just doesn't really go anywhere, because this show doesn't realize that it should conclude itself all in one season. That is the most strenuous thing, is just realizing, like, did you really think that you were going to get 2 seasons out of this show? Did you really think you were like, yeah, this show is so effing good, I thought it was going to explode off the map? How, when watching this, with it not be sleep-inducing, when in this show could you ultimately see, yeah, there's the episode that is going to get, like, a lot of people to climb onto this show, and, like, by then, after watching the first 2 to 3 episodes, people have already just passed on this show. That's the honest-to-God truth. Like, when you need an entire show where you have to watch the entire thing to ultimately get something out of it, because you're just, like, waiting for something to happen, and it never does. Because ultimately you're thinking, like, TV-14, like, well, they could probably do some, like, floor is lava challenges, or they could do some kind of, like, tag challenge, or they can do some kind of, like, punishment things where people get punished at the end if they don't make a challenge, which, yeah, there's so many things that you could do with this, like, these people who made the show were sitting on a gold mine of an idea, but didn't know how to execute it, and didn't want to push that it's like, we want to make this a mature show. Because if they would have made this a mature show, this would have been the greatest anime of all time, just with the pitch alone. But instead, they went to be too safe, they went to be too cute, and that's what's done them in the end. So, to try to pretend that this isn't like $1 million idea and they squandered it, like, is me not being honest. Like, maybe I should take this idea and figure out some way of how to do it and make $1 billion off of it by giving it to an adult audience. Make $1 million. And just like, yeah, I'm going to reference this anime and say, yeah, I watched the anime, The Ones Within. And yeah, it was just, like, they shot themselves in the foot here with not having this appeal to an adult audience. They could have reworked this and made it an adult audience appeal, and wham. I wouldn't call it The Ones Within because everybody will be remembering this thing. What a disappointing season. So, let's go into spoilers about it, because it's just, if people hear my just utterly just, like, about all this, that's what I felt about this season. It was just like, man, this was, just on paper, freaking gonna be, like, a cool thing, and they took this cool thing, and they farted on it, and they just, like, dragged it out, and they did nothing with, they did nothing. 12 seasons could have been, like, 24 seasons, or a 7-season show that could have been TVMA, and could have been like, wow, this show blew my mind. But no. Was this show trying to be so safe that if they would have went mature, and if they would have went with a bunch of, like, video game references, they thought that they were going to get sued at some point? Like, if you would have taken every single one of these concepts, every single one of these episode things, and then you would have put a gigantic twist to every single one of them, even that, like taking hide and seek, an episode about hide and seek to an extreme measure, like, that would have been like, oh my god, you know what, like, the ideas about these episodes suck, but, like, watching a movie like Ready or Not, and, like, thinking about what a hide and seek episode could be, oh my god, that could have been interesting. But instead, it was kind of like the best episode of this whole entire show out of a cluster of other episodes that felt just so boring. Boring. I don't know how this could, honestly, this show could really appeal to men. I think it probably would much more appeal to women, but again, maybe some guys have different certain kind of tastes to this anime. I don't know. So let's go into spoilers. Spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time again to spoil the show, because ultimately, trying to get this out there. Yeah, so ultimately, probably an anime that no one will care about. It'll be just another one of those where it gets donut holes worth of zeros of views. Or a lot of people just be like, hey, what's this? And then they'll go under and they're like, why do a review about a anime probably no one knows about? And it's just, I don't know. But it's just like, here's $1 million idea. Here's $1 million idea. But they cracked on it. Any anime, this is your idea to steal and make it a mature way and just $1 billion right out of the gate. $1 billion. So, let's go into this. So, have I even gotten to the spoilers? I don't even know anymore. How long have I been talking? 20 minutes. Okay, so it must not be spoilers. I'm like, I've done this video so many times repetitiously that I'm like, am I at spoilers? Did I do spoilers? Spoiler time. So, okay. So the concept of this is Alpaca, and Alpaca is telling them you have to get a $100 million views on this series. And so they will stay there as long as it takes to get these 100 million views. And so every single episode they have to do challenges, hoping that these challenges will get them views. And I'm just like, how is it that all these people are one in this virtual world? How is it that one, like, how is it that these people got, like, taken and now are in this virtual world? And how is it that, like, these people are eating and everything like that in this world? And so many questions, nothing makes sense, and boom goes the dynamite. So this has to be some kind of like Matrix-esque-like world, because that's the only thing that makes sense to me. So we go into this, and the first episode is kind of the introduction of what they're supposed to do, and then right after that we go into this like Ouija board seance thing that ultimately unleashes this ghost that is just supposed to be friends with one of the characters, and that is really just what the real first episode really crooks on. We have the horror specialist that doesn't really do much of anything that is really horror in this show, barely. Or, like, there's sometimes when monsters appear and they have to escape from these monsters, but that's about it. It's pretty stupid. Anyway, so, like, I think the next episode after this is very much cruxing on, like, some plant monster that they supposedly have to hide away from for a certain amount of time, or escape from a certain amount of time for, like, 60 minutes. I'm just like, okay, sure, I guess that could be a much more exciting episode. I think that's, like, the third episode, because the second episode, there's, like, this, like, egg hatching thing, where people are fantasizing about what quite possibly the egg could hatch into. One person is randomly thinking about the giant panda, one person is thinking about this schoolgirl, one person is thinking about a person wearing an afro, and some other girl is just imagining some cute little thing. Egg cracks, it's some goofy panda afro weird thing, and it makes no rational sense. But the little girl is mentioning, like, oh no, hey, wait a minute, like, at first this thing looks like a heaping heap of crap, but eventually maybe we just have to continue to upgrade it and level it up for it to actually be much more seductive, anime-looking, blah, blah, blah. And they kind of show what the end product could be of where this panda could ultimately look like. And it never looks anything like that via this episode. And because, again, it's something they flash in the pan, do something, but it doesn't go anywhere. Like, so much of this show doesn't really go anywhere. It doesn't make any real, like, you would think everything through every episode would continue to tie on to the rest of the show, and it never does. Like, every episode feels like a one-off thing that you could skip at any point once you find out what the challenge is for that day. Yeah, there are certain things that could otherwise tie into other episodes, but it is what it is. So anyways, reasonably, we go into some of these other episodes. Let's go into the hide and seek episode, which I think is the best episode out of probably this entire season. We have it to where everybody has to supposedly hide in these barrage of rooms. And there's 3 women that all are going to be looking for these girls. The alpaca is going to be ringing a bell, and then the girls will go out to random rooms to find these people. Like, at first, the alpaca tells them for one person to hide in every single one of the rooms. Well, of course, they don't do that. A lot of the people all group up into certain rooms, and then the girls, of course, go into those rooms, tag them, and then they get blindfolded to where somebody else who isn't blindfolded has to touch them to get them to be unblindfolded. If everybody is blindfolded and the girls come into that room again, they are going to be permanently blind for the rest of the future of this game. And so ultimately, what do you think is going to happen? People are going to have no eyesight for the rest of this game? No. That's the whole problem of this entire thing, is you're expecting everybody to win everything. There's an entire episode where you have people that have a challenge. These people that have a challenge about some girls that are consistently going missing in this town. They have to figure out how to supposedly be in a Scooby-Doo gang catching this villain thing. They come up with this master plan to have one of the boys dress up as a girl to entice this monster-esh like thing. The monster comes for this girl that's actually a guy, and then it ends up just like the monster takes the boy, and it ends up that the alpaca comes to save him and basically tells the monster that he's kind of like breaking the rules or he's not doing the right thing, and the monster is like, well, I can just do whatever I want, and the alpaca is like, no, like, if anything, I can reset this entire game and you will be gone. So reasonably, the monster lets up, and ultimately, you can figure out who the big monster was. It's the old man that had the girl, because the girl pops back up, and you're like, oh yeah, it's the old man. Like, you kind of already thought of that, because the guy doesn't change his voice from old man to monster. It sounds the exact same thing. Immediately, once I heard the voice, I'm like, oh yeah, it's the old man. And here's my thing. Yeah, we have 2 people with the exact same voice. Now we have a monster with the same voice as the old man. Like, wow, this show is so mysterious and cheap that you can't change a person's voice to give you that mystery of who anything is. Like, I don't know who this target audience is, but it has to be like a 4-year-old or a 6-year-old or something. I don't know if it could be any reasonable age of anybody, because reasonably, it's just like, how could you find this show enticing? There's nothing about it that's enticing. But it has a great idea, though. $1 million idea that eventually I'm going to take this idea and just make $1 billion out of it. Better than the show. And then I'll keep mentioning this show. Yeah, this is where I got this $1 billion idea from. like twisted it and turned it into a much more adult appropriate content. And I was like, yeah, $1 billion. So anyways, we go on to this, and like there's a point where somebody eventually ends up in this white room that is kind of like this detention thing. If somebody really isn't pitching in and participating and whatever, it gets thrown in this white room. The only thing is, the person in this white room ends up getting to where somebody breaks into this white room, and it is players from a game previously before this, to where evidently they didn't get the 100 million views, so they are just stuck there. They come, they talk to this guy, they have him just kind of walk around all these underground things. He almost gets attacked by this giant fish, and reasonably nothing really happens to him because TV-14. It ends up that this guy throws firecrackers at this fish, because TV-14, it's not like he can shoot guns at it, and it's not like he can have the fish bleed, so the fish is completely fine. And like, what is the firecrackers going to give us a rated R show? Whatever. Anyway, so we end up that like these kids like tell this other kid about their backstory and this and that, and one of the girls is actually a relative of the stealth mask kid. It's his sister, and I'm like, wow, great. What are they gonna do with this? They never do anything with it, and I guess they were expecting for a second season to tie this up. Come on, really? Like, you're really gonna get a second season? You really think you were really gonna get a second season out of this? And if you do, I don't know how. What are you gonna do to entice people to go into this second season? I don't get it. So, and I don't get how they can make this intriguing enough. They need to push the envelope. They need to make this TVMA. They do. It desperately needs this, because it would be viciously much more intriguing, and it would be, wow. People would love the show. But no. So anyways, like, do something dark and disturbing with this show. It was never dark and or disturbing. There was no like obstacle course. There was never like a Floor's Lava situation that they could have had fun with this. Like, have everybody make money while the show is going on by people donating. Make it so that people were getting voted high, and you'd have to protect the most popular person so that we can get higher views. Do something. I don't know if I mentioned all this, because, again, it's getting to the point where I'm like, what have I said so far? Good grief. I know there's probably episodes that I'm kind of forgetting about, because a lot of stuff is just get to the point of the end. So we also have this episode where eventually we have people dipping into a virtual reality in a virtual reality world. Anybody confused about this? We're inceptioning virtual reality in an already virtual world. I'm so confused. So, I can't tell if this world is real or not, or what is it? Is it some limbo? What is this thing? What is this thing that we're doing? Make up your mind, show. Make up your mind. So, we have it to where, because this show doesn't even know what it's doing in its own life. So, we have it to where these people go into these virtual reality, like, containment field things, which that's what they should have done in the very beginning of this whole thing, but they didn't. So, half of these people come out of these containment virtual things, and then half of them don't. And the challenge of this whole thing is to nurture the other half of the team as babies. Well, not really babies, like really super young kids. and each one of them has flowers on top of their head, and they have to all make the flowers on top of their head bloom. I'm just like, wow, so every single character is all gonna have to turn into this, like, mother hen character, and I'm just like, can I please skip this? But anyways, we eventually find out that the girl that loves the horror genre the most for gaming, which never really comes up, she ultimately is this person that has a shrine of another person, the guy with the white stick of thing in his hair, or white kind of strike in his hair, or whatever you want to call it. The kid that is the weirdest, the most focal pointed kid. Like, he is the most, like, you don't know what this kid is. He's just happy about everything. It's weird. It's so off-puttingly weird that this kid is just happy to do anything and to look any different way. And he's happy no matter what. And I'm just like, God, I wanted to break this kid down and have him just be, like, miserable at one point. But no, he's happy about everything. He hugs everything. How is this person a video game person? I don't understand. Maybe he just plays Pokemon, but he loves escape rooms. So I guess, like, he never has to fight anybody in his life. So I guess, like, when he does have to fight anybody, he just hugs them to death. But he doesn't kill anybody, he just hugs them, and then, like, yeah! Challenge accomplished, you beat somebody by hugging them. Anyways, he's too nice, and I hate it. So, anyways, we get to, like, taking care of the babies, the baby plant things, and all of them supposedly bloom except for one, but they had to bloom 3 out of them anyways. So they beat that challenge. They basically beat every challenge. Everything is just, like, everything about this, there's no risk. There's nothing to just go, oh my god, I needed to see every episode. Like, once you get to know where the challenge is, you're like, oh, they're gonna beat it. And then you just, like, skip to the end. Because you don't learn much about any of these things. When they put that whole puzzle episode together, you just learn that the white-haired girl is working with the alpaca, and she is like the accountant out of this game or something. Like, you would think she would be like the producer behind it all, and like pushing everybody to do this game, and also she is really trying to get as much ratings as possible, which technically she does kind of do that. And ultimately she has some kind of background already. Like, who knows how long that this person has really been working behind the scenes with everything. So anyways, she has a whole bunch of information on all the players and everything like that, to where it seems like you can learn about all these characters. I don't care about any of the backstory of any of these characters. All of these characters are all vanilla. All the characters are all vanilla. None of these characters stick out to me in a real way where I need to invest in any of them. And I don't feel that any of the characters really are going to like, oh yeah, they need to bring this character in to win this challenge. None of that matters. None of that matters. Anybody can win any challenge. Really just need 4 random people to do anything through this, because the levels are so severely bland and whatever. There is one entire episode where they have it to where supposedly the crux of everybody is telling the truth. We find out that there's one character that has a severe problem with sleeping. A lot of times people pass out on this show just because they don't realize that they should have a sleep cycle. There's a lot of people that there's one person that has such a problem sleeping that he has to take pills to fall asleep. That's why he games so often, is because he actually has problems sleeping. But yeah, we find out that person is in this mission where he has to tell someone the truth the whole entire time, and when he does lie, mummies appear. This entire episode has a very much like Indiana Jones like theme, and so these people have to kind of bash through these zombies in a TV-14 way, because you can't kill zombies. So smacking some mummies, and they rush through to get to this like alpaca hieroglyph that ultimately spews out some slime thing that ultimately appears with the head of one of the other characters on the show, and now they have to tell the truth about why they both like this one person, and they go into all the reasons. Like, there's a giant time in this episode where they have to have this whole like musical segment that kind of just throws in just a bunch of visuals, and I'm just like, filler? Is that you, filler? Like, filler, is that you? I didn't know. I didn't, like, this was like a real killing of time where it was just like they had to really slow down this story because they didn't realize that this episode only took up like 38 minutes and they wanted to get it to that full 40. So they took a 2-minute lapse of music to get to the point where, okay, now this guy has to tell you why this certain character is his favorite character and why like this certain character takes care of him through this game and this and that. And then they keep this slime blob guy with a head through the rest of this thing that always hides in the motorcycle guy's character's helmet, which I never understand why this guy has a motorcycle helmet, because they don't go anywhere with it. They don't do anything with this guy that has a motorcycle helmet. They don't, like, there's never a time where the helmet is a key thing in this game. There's never a time where he races anybody anywhere through a car racing thing or motorcycle racing thing. It never comes up. You would think that that would be a TV-14 thing to do on this thing, but evidently they couldn't figure out how to do that on the show, as well as billions of other things that they kind of dropped the ball on hilariously. Enough of the times. So, going all up in there, just dancing around, just having a good time with this show, just bebopping and boop-bopping. So, we go into this show, and, like I said, there's a white room. People came back from other game. It goes nowhere, and it never does. If I had mentioned that, like, there's so much stuff that they dropped the ball on. But anyways, there's also another episode where I think let's kind of wrap up to, how long have I been talking for? 41 minutes. Okay. Like, there's so much that I don't know if I'm saying or not. That's the problem. There's a lot of stuff that I'm probably going to look back at this, like, I said this twice, or I said this blah, 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 blah. I didn't talk about this entire episode. But I don't know if this thing is going to be relevant enough to where people are like, oh yeah, you left out this episode, and maybe I'll come back to it or whatever. It's like, yeah, I tried to put this thing out so many numerous times, and this is what I forgot. But yeah, I think I'm kind of cruxing most of the review, and there might be some stuff that I left out. But anyways, let's kind of push on to the very, like, pretty much close to the end, because I don't know if, like, there's much other things that are even relevant. Like, I wish that they would have done a much more, like, Dungeons and Dragons-esque, like, thing in here. Like, they could have done, like, so many plays on so many video games, but they did nothing. This is supposed to be a virtual game world where you're supposed to try as much as possible to make the things enticing enough to get tons and tons of views. And instead, like, I would have been surprised if they couldn't have even, like, got off at doing, like, 1,000 views throughout this entire first season. Because if nobody, like, even for already pre-existing show, like, that is the problem. If it's an already pre-existing show, shouldn't they have gotten, like, from the past people, shouldn't they have gotten those, like, those however many people that were on those views on this one? So, as soon as, like, oh, hey, another season of this is dropping, then you would think that, like, they would already have, like, a diehard audience that are coming on here that are viewing this thing, and, like, it's freaking going to be amazing, and, ooh, oh, wow, there's even much more a mature woman and guy and this and that. Ooh, I'm going to go into this. Anyways, let's push into the last episode, because recently I think there's a lot of stuff that I have completely forgot about at this point through this show. So, the last episode is basically an entire episode about them doing a casino-themed episode, which I'm like, this is how you're going to end on this show, about people desperately needing to get a bunch of gold coins. I'm like, man, they could have done a lot of funny things throughout this entire season. Like, you know how many times people have to get goofy, like, objectives in games? It makes no sense. Like, they could have made fun of, like they could have done a whole entire episode where it's like a goof off of Pac-Man. You could have a bunch of ghosts appear, and, like, it would reasonably be, like, a much more mature version of Pac-Man that you could have done on here, but you could have called it, like, Pac Team. Like, hey, the challenge is going to be called Pac Team. Yeah, you guys are going to have to scramble to get all of these gold balls. You're going to have to consume every single gold ball, and while you're doing that, you have to elusively run away from all of these ghosts. Hopefully you can get away with them. Yeah. And ultimately, the way that you could have ultimately Pac-Man'd it up is, like, you could turn these ghosts into regular humans that don't attack these people for a limited time, until then eventually they turn back into ghosts, and then, pooh, basically Pac-Man, but not exactly, because it's a much more realistic Pac-Man. Again, there's so many, like, the problem, the last episode. So the very last episode, they do this Super Mario, like, reference. They do this Super Mario Brothers reference, but it's such a quick flash in the pan like thing that like they try to do this, but then it kind of is used as, like, this stupid thing, like, hey, this is where we would have wanted to go with this, but instead we are just going to make these casino slot things that are dumb, and then everybody has to get a boatload of gold to get this golden ticket to get some certain wish. So this is like Willy Wonka, but instead of already people having the golden ticket, people need to get the golden ticket to get some wish. So all these people are going through these slot machines trying to get this golden ticket, or just to get the most gold. I don't know. It's so murky and confusing. We find out a guy is doing so well in the slot machines, he's getting buried in gold, but even that isn't good enough to get one golden ticket, so ultimately they have to do some last-ditch bet offer that ultimately they win on, but they can't really show that they win, to drudge up like a suspense thing going on, as if we're not going to know that every time these people don't win these challenges. You gotta suspensefully for the last challenge just go like, are they gonna win? Let's slow motionly see if they're gonna win or not. Whoo! Like, This is like the filler of time where we have to like slowly show them win, and everybody has to slow motioningly just be like, yeah, like filler, because again, they had to stretch this whole like last episode out. Like they had to stretch so many things out. So ultimately, there's one of the kids that ends up getting stuck in this board game, like a Jumanji way, and they use this golden ticket to unlock this kid out of this board game that he went into, and ultimately, basically, for the bulk of the time, they use this board game and they do the exact same thing that they did in previous portions of this episode. Dumb. But anyways, one kid kind of stumbles upon, through kind of walking around this casino, and finds these like Super Mario like green like pipe things that he can drop into. So ultimately he goes through the pipe and he sees this like Mario-esque like world, and they quickly gloss over this Mario-esque looking world. They show it for like 5 seconds or like 10 seconds, and then cue all these other people finding all these green pipes too. They can't say it's Super Mario World. They have to say it's some other world. And they ultimately have this guy coming out of the green pipe, and he's twice the size bigger, and he has a mustache on, and he goes, "It's a Mia," and then that's all they can do. And to show that this is a video game world. And like that is the big Super Mario reference in this episode, which I thought was dumb. That was dumb. So again, they use the gold ticket to unlock this guy from the board game, and he comes out and he's like, "Hey, I'm unlocked, woohoo!" And so they're all like on the beach, like walking around, and they realize that they have like 70 million views on their arm, because their arm evidently tells them how many views they have, how long that they have for certain challenges and stuff like that. I don't quite understand how anybody could see that in a darkened room or whatever, but I guess it is just what it is. Yeah, you would think that, like, instead of just having this on their arm, you would think they would have like some kind of like like a Pip-Boy device, or some kind of like computer thing on their arm, because everybody else kind of does that in a video game. But again, this thing doesn't want to try to be like a video game. It wants to be whatever the heck it wants to be. But it just doesn't like visually look nice. It doesn't visually look pleasing, as well as just falling flat on so many things. So basically, the way the show ends is them just going, "Oh, hey, yeah, we only hit 70 million views. That sucks." And, like, they just kind of walk off onto the sunset, and, like, that's basically how the show ends. So I'm like, so this show doesn't need to bottle itself up in one season. You would think, like, hey, this is the last, like, challenge. You need to get to 1 million views, which I don't know how a casino thing could get them to that. It's not like bizarrely, there were some people that were like selling off their coins to get some kind of merchandise or something. You would think, use your head developers or use your head writers. Like, freaking have, like, some people would take their money to go into watching like casino shows. You could have like the Lapaka doing some kind of like magical show, and that's what one person is doing instead of legitimately playing the game. You could have had one character this entire time never willing to participate in anything going on in this game. And that would have honestly been hilarious to consistently see how this guy is going to work his way out of not participating in any number of these games, because he feels like he's kidnapped and that he's slighted and that he's whatever. And every time he's going to grab a flying angel alpaca, he's going to scream into there, "I'm taken hostage! Help me! Help me!" help you. You would think that this person would try as much as, like, you would think anybody would try as much as possible to try to get out of this, try to seek help. Like, you would think that they would have grabbed any number of these alpaca camera things that they saw and desperately, like, my name is so-and-so, please help me. Like, you would have thought that would have been any number of times where people would have tried to do that and failed miserably, but no one did. I guess everybody is happy with living in this life. Evidently, they don't realize how much anybody would miss them if they were gone, which is kind of nobody speculated about that. Nobody had any kind of confessional time where they were just like, yeah, like, we were all, like, collected and we didn't have any time to say goodbye to anybody. Like, nobody reflected on, like, the previous time before coming to this game, how all of a sudden they just woke up in this game and they didn't have time to say goodbye to anybody, and they, like, nobody had time to, like, compress from real life to this game. There was, like, everybody was just so happy to be there, and it was so off-putting. It was so off-putting that it was like, okay, everybody was just happy to be there and having a good time and just make the best out of it, which I thought was weird. But anyways, yeah. That's how the show just ended. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that I missed out on. There's probably going to be an entire episode where I just completely skipped just because I didn't feel as important enough. There was certain stuff that I didn't feel as important enough. Or I backed over a lot of things just because I don't remember if I didn't cover things or not. Yeah. So this was just a concept that was too good for its own show. So I'm going to go. Bye, everybody. Bye, everybody.